politician in this country, I do feel that should stand for the sovereignty and security of our country more than any other interest. Like that is our, like end of the day, like we shouldn't let people from outside actually ever use our differences to compromise our core national interests, include especially our sovereignty and security.
No, finally, let me ask you. You're saying in your tweet, it is quite clear that you see that this is a state, a foreign power sponsored channel or network and agency that has a history of prejudice against India. Do you also believe that there is something sinister and mischievous as far as the release of this documentary is concerned and the manner in which it has been shown?
See, I would go to somewhere else. Like, for example, now this is the 75th year of our independence, and in that 75 years, we have come a long way. And this is the year where proudly I can say as an Indian that we have overtaken even Great Britain as the 5th largest economy, and we are in certain trajectory at this moment. And at this moment, again, I find it disappointing as an Indian and a young Indian to see our old colonial rulers still trying to dabble in this country's internal matters, which I think no responsible political outfit should be encouraging in any manner. And that is where I stand.
Congress has given itself the pedestal that we are the only national alternative. I think Congress must come to the terms that the public has bigger, greater choices today. It doesn't have to choose the Congress alone.
They'll put women, they'll put children and hide behind them. They are cowards. ये बुज़दिल तो हैं, ये सीधे तो लड़ नहीं सकते. 3 बार लड़ाई की और तीसरी बार तो 90,000 हमने पकड़ लिए थे. चूड़ियाँ पहना के हमने भेजे थे उनको वापस.
Our athletes are the pride of this nation. They surely deserve better than, being forced to sit in the biting cold in Delhi in Jantar Mantar protesting for, their basic rights.
No action against Shivaji, no action against R.S. Bharti, and there's no FIR. How can you get away by abusing, threatening governor?
और लीगल कानूनी रूप से वो बैन नहीं है भारत में, तो उसे देखना कोई गुनाह नहीं है. लोग देख रहे हैं.
आगे की स्क्रीनिंग भी ऑर्गेनाइज करेंगे आप?
बिल्कुल, इस तरह की मूवी अगर आती है और कोई ग्रुप यहाँ पे स्क्रीन करता है तो हम उसे सपोर्ट करेंगे.
If you read Bhagavad Gita or you read the Upanishads, you will see in it it's written that the truth cannot be hidden. The truth always comes out.
Is it the bankruptcy of ideas and political irrelevance that is driving them to lap up anything that comes by?
Namaste, Jai Hind, and welcome to this edition of The Right Stand. Ladies and gentlemen, they were colonialists, they were supremacists. They continue to retain that mindset despite being asked to quit India and despite being sent packing. But it rankles somewhere. Do we not need to question ourselves when we fall prey to an imperialist design? A state-sponsored media of a nation that today is struggling to even stand on its own. A nation who we within 75 years of our existence have beaten through and zoomed past. Has a larger economy. That nation and its state-sponsored media is trying to carry out a propaganda on a story or an incident, which is again a travesty on humanity, but an incident that is more than nearly 2 decades ago, if not more. But Many people who are now being pushed into watching this were not even perhaps born when this incident occurred. A lot has happened thereafter. Charges, counter charges, arguments, more than 177 odd cases which have been disposed of by, and convictions which have been made, arrests that have happened, and exonerations that have been delivered by the highest court in our country, the parliament of our country, the voter of our country. It's all been done. But those who are in denial are continuing to peddle something that is not fully correct, factually right, economical with the truth. 2 decades later, on an agenda-driven effort which was done by somebody who came at that point in time and presented a very distorted narrative. How long will we continue to do this? And how long will people in our country, just to settle an ideological score, continue to subjugate themselves to this mental, emotional, and of course narrative-driven slavery? These are all questions that come to mind, ladies and gentlemen, when we talk about this entire documentary fight, which of course was by an imperialistic design, and of course somewhere had those people who don't have the best interest of Bharat. They want Bharat to suffer, they want social strife, and they want Bharat to look weak and divided. Why can't we wisen up to that? And it's now being used by those who believe, "Arey, Modi ke khilaf hai, chalo dikha dete hain." Whether it is right or wrong, what are the facts? All that is tossed out of the window in this ideological battle. How is that fair? Is this not hurting our own country? And is this not irresponsible behavior when you misinform and misguide a whole generation? Will these same people put out the facts about what happened in 1984? Will these same people talk about what happened in 1990 in Jammu and Kashmir? Will they talk the facts? Or there they'll prefer to be economical with the truth the other way because that narrative is inconvenient? Is that not hypocrisy, ladies and gentlemen? Why should, if the truth will come out, then why run away from it? Why not accept the truth? The truth did come out, but those who talk about truth, aren't they in denial themselves? Many questions. Let's go straight across to our guests on this BBC documentary, Rao. Why peddle a malign India design is the larger question. Rajya Sabha MP and of course a legend in the world of classical arts and dance, Sonal Mansingh ji is with us. Uday Mahurkar, Chief Information Commissioner with us. Mohandas Pai, Chairman, RN Capital Partners with us. And Pandit Satish K. Sharma, Chair of the British Board of Dharmic Scholars, also with us. Namaste and Jai Hind to everybody. Thank you very, very much.
Thank you.
I promise to try and not make this a shouting fest. It's about getting everybody's point of view. And that's why we have such an august panel. Sonal ji, those people who are pushing out narrative of people जो कभी यहाँ पर हमको कम समझकर, हमें हमारी संस्कृति से दूर कर कर, हमें लूट करके गए, वो आज हमको बताएंगे कि हमारे देश का सच क्या है, ट्रुथ क्या है. And there are those here who are saying, चलो चलो इसी को दिखाते हैं, let's show it to people. Isn't that a statement on ourselves too, as a country, as a people?
ये पहली बार तो नहीं है ना, ये पहली बार नहीं है. और विशेष करके क्योंकि वो राज RAJ उसका जो एक तुमाक है, उसके एक मूछ का जो आंकड़ा है, हाँ, तो वो तो नीचे हो रहा है, लेकिन उनको ये पसंद नहीं है कि जो राज के तले, एड़ियों के तले दबे हुए थे, वो विशेष करके पिछले 8 वर्षों में इतना कैसे ऊपर चढ़ गए कि हमारा देश तो नीचे जा रहा है और जिस पे हम राज कर रहे थे वो तो इतने ऊपर चले गए हैं. तो ये तो उनसे सहन नहीं हो रहा है शायद. दूसरा मुझे लगता है कि उनको पता है कि जब एक देश का कल्चर, आप लोगों को कल्चर से दूर करते जाओ तो वो देश की संस्कृति, सभ्यता अपने आप ही गिरने लगती है. उन्होंने बहुत कोशिश की जिसको सुधारने में अभी भी हम लोग लगे हुए हैं. तीसरी बात तो आप जानते ही हैं कि जब भी कुछ बढ़िया होने वाला होता है तो हम कहते हैं विघ्न संतोषी लोग, विघ्न संतोषी लोग कूद पड़ते हैं। दीज आर द नॉन सस्पेक्ट्स। इसमें कुछ आश्चर्य की बात नहीं है। मुझे तो हंसी इस बात की आ रही है कि इन लोगों की अल्प मंद बुद्धि में ये बात कब बैठेगी कि हाथी चलता है, कुत्ते पीछे भौंकते रहते हैं, हाथी को फर्क नहीं पड़ता है। और जो चीज़ एक बार 20 साल पहले फाइनलाइज हो गई, बंद, चैप्टर ओवर हो गया, बंद हो गया, हमारे मोदी जी को 9 घंटों तक बिठा के पूछपरछ हुई जी। और उसके बाद सुप्रीम कोर्ट उन्होंने कह दिया कि बिल्कुल गलत, इसमें मोदी जी का कोई हाथ नहीं था। उसके बाद हु इज बीबीसी टू रेज दिस क्वेश्चन नाउ? आई मीन हंसने की बात है। मुझे दुख नहीं हो रहा है, मुझे तो लग रहा है कि होना ही था। G20 प्रेसिडेंटशिप कैसे मिल गई भैया? अरे हमारे होते हुए कैसे हो गया? तो ये जो उनके मन का दुख है, भयंकर दुख है, वो इसी तरीके से परिवर्तित होके बार बार आपको दिखाई देगा। ये तो अभी शुरुआत है।
आप कह रहे हैं कि ये तो अभी शुरुआत है। समवेयर द प्राइम मिनिस्टर आल्सो आफ्टर विनिंग गुजरात सेइंग दैट ये तो अब और तड़पेंगे, देयर अटैक्स विल बिकम मोर सिवियर, दे विल कमिट मी हार्डर, सो वी ऑल हैव टू हैव मोर एबिलिटी टू सहन शक्ति to persevere. But Uday Mahurkar ji, we are a nation which also has 1/5 of the world population. We are the 5th largest economy in the world. We are stronger and bigger and greater than Britain. We should tell them कि अब तुम हमारे तलों के नीचे हो. You dare not do this with us. Why aren't we exercising that kind of muscle? Diplomatic and also economic, and also as a nation, why aren't we turning around and saying that you dare not do this? Then we should send out documentaries about Churchill, sir. We should see what he thought about Indians. A prime minister, they tend to hail his comments about Indians, what he thought about us as a nation, how he used our people as cannon fodder during the world wars.
Anand, I'd like to digress a bit from the focus today, You see, I am that person who was in charge of India Today magazine in Gujarat during this episode. When Godhra happened, what happened after Godhra, how Mr. Modi was exonerated, all these things I have reported at a very close quarter. There is a story I did in 2010 in human rights. That story proved that the activists who went after Modi, they were speaking lies, they were indulging in perjury. If you remember, there is one incident which was peddled for almost 8 years. One lady, Kausarbi, her womb was ripped open and the child was lifted at the point of sword. Now, when I went to meet the doctor who did the post-mortem in 2010, he told me that no such incident had happened. That lady had died in the riots, no doubt. But this whole thing was a concoction of activists who went after Mr. Modi. So the point is the BBC above the Supreme Court of India? Actually, I wonder. By now, the government of India should have, the Ministry of External Affairs should have summoned the High Commissioner of UK in India, and sought his explanation, because BBC is a state media. It is exactly like Doordarshan going after Prince Charles or some dignitary of Britain, and Britain, how would British people feel about it? So I am wondering, I think we've been quite lenient.
But why?
Because
that's the
Mr.
question.
Modi was exonerated by the highest court in the country.
Udayji, that's my question. Why are we so lenient? Why do we take it lying down?
Supreme Court was very lenient with these activists because they had indulged in perjury. They had spoken lies, which is proved in the court. My entire story was vindicated by the Supreme Court finally.
No, my question, Udayji,
I think there is a limit to what, and you see, this is part of a larger conspiracy. You see Economist, you see New York Times, they keep on peddling this from time to time. So they have an agenda. They have an agenda against India, they have an agenda against the Prime Minister, and India is doing so well on the world stage. Maybe there is an agenda behind it. Because these stories keep on appearing almost with regularity.
Yeah, Udayji, can you hear me? I'm just asking
So
why
I think it's a very serious issue. The government of India should take it up more strictly.
Jay.
Maybe it can summon the UK High Commissioner, in this matter.
Thank you, Udayji. But the fact is that if it is misinformation, why is it allowing to be spread? And why are political parties closer home, Mohandas Paiji? Why are political parties using it as an opportunity to bait the Prime Minister? They should first put the country first, because if a nation is peddling a false narrative about our country and its Prime Minister, shouldn't that come first rather than trying to say, oh, this is going to help in my ideological battle and my obsession to hate Modi?
Anand, the rise of Prime Minister Modi has made the existing power structure irrelevant and redundant. So they are seizing any opportunity to fight and show Prime Minister Modi in bad light. And this has been going on for the last 8 years. And right from 2002, you have seen the leader of a political party make obscene remarks against him in public, for which he gave it back. Now, the BBC is part of a global movement led by George Soros to go against what they term as nationalistic governments. Because these are people from Europe who are against nationalism. They forget that Indian nationalism is not against any other country or any other person. It is against a colonial power which oppressed and looted this country. Indian nationalism is not about domination, whereas European nationalism, like the German nationalism or the British nationalism, the French nationalism, was all about domination. So they're applying the European standard without knowing what India is all about. And with their money power, they bought over many Indians. We can see that Open Society, who are the Indians who are working with them, so many people have joined them. And one person who worked for a global charity or global NGO in human rights on a TV interview with CNN abused Prime Minister Modi and called him names.
Yes.
These are Indians who have sold their souls for a few dollars more. And you see it happening. The Washington Post, the New York Times are all part of the same group of people funded by George Soros and people like that. So they have taken on themselves to save the world. They forget, Indian democracy is very robust. Indian democracy means that we elect our own people, we have opposition parties, we have the rule of law, we have courts. We are much more democratic than many of those countries who claim to be democratic. Now, in this BBC thing is clearly a hit job. If there's a documentary to be made, the documentary has to be based on document. Now, all the fake interviews with those people whom they have quoted, they've been shown to be liars. They're shown to be making deliberately false statements by the Supreme Court. And the Supreme Court has pointed it out. They had a SIT under the care of the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court has heard everybody, given a reasoned order. When the order is there, all the data is there, the evidence is there, the highest court of India has given a judgment.
Yes.
Now, after 20 years, the BBC comes out with this kind of a fake narrative, and you can see very clearly Pakistan is using the fake narrative in the United States and other places. Now, Pandit Satish Sharma of London has raised the issue, how many Pakistanis are there working in BBC? You might be interested to know, and you must find the data. Many Pakistanis in the last 20 years have infiltrated the BBC, and you can see them writing negative reports about India all the while. How many negative reports about Pakistan has come on the BBC about the 1,000 young Sindhi girls who are minors being abducted, converted, and the courts holding it to be valid? I mean, this is a travesty of human rights against minors. How many of them are talking about the misuse of power and the economic, turmoil that's happening in Pakistan? None of them are doing that because it's all a cover-up. They infiltrated the BBC. Many of the BBC leftists are hand in glove with the Islamists, and there is money at play, and you can see the narrative coming out very, very clearly. And
so let me
Anand, I want to end by saying, you can look at in the last 2 or 3 years how many stories the BBC has run about India. How many of them are negative? Is there nothing positive about this country which has grown so much, which has 1.4 billion people, possibly the largest population for any country in the world? Is nothing positive Why didn't you do research in your TV channel and see in the last 3 years how many stories they have done, how many are negative?
My point is,
any other
Mohandas
country
Paji,
in the world has got so much negative reporting, and these are all done by the BBC Indians in India.
Correct.
And they run fake narratives.
So if BBC is very strongly rooted in India,
Anand, I would like to say something here.
with the BBC
Anand.
Hindi, with its own operations, its website, and these are all Indians who are part of this, and it
Yes.
has been
Same
held as a
Indians are
beacon
running
as far as the
fake
Anand, I would
standard
like to say
as
something.
far as the standard of journalism is concerned. My
You can see
question.
the names. You
Ma-
must identify the names and put them in the
My
public.
question, sir.
How
My
many
question.
negative stories
Anand, I would
they have
like to
run.
say something.
My question, sir, is yes, Uday Maurkar ji. My question, Mr. Uday Maurkar, and I'm coming back to you.
Anand, let me intervene here.
Ji,
I think it is a good time for the government of Britain to look into the entire structure of BBC. BBC is full of pan-Islamists, full of communist thinking people. I think there is a lobby there which is not in control of the British government. You know, I think it is a good time for them to go deep into it and find out who are those people who are indulging in these antics from time to time.
no, but
And it
that
is
is
state media. I
that
think
is
the government of Britain has to summon the courage.
that is Udayji. That is about BBC there, and BBC International and Pandit Satish Sharma ji will correct me if I'm wrong. Is funded by the MEA. It comes under the MEA because there is a huge budget of the British taxpayer that is given to them to fund them, and it runs into billions of pounds.
Absolutely.
But
Absolutely.
but
That
there
is
is
what I want to say.
this beacon of journalism, this beacon or gold standard also has its operations embedded in India. What was the kind of communication that it was putting out when India was battling COVID and it came out with its vaccine policy? What did we do as a country to try and ask this organization what its intent is?
It has an agenda against India.
My
There no
point is,
doubt.
but it
There
is
no
continuing
more
to
evidence
it
needed
is
to
continuing.
prove that
Sir,
BBC has an agenda
Sir,
against this country.
my point is, sir, you are also the CIC, and I humbly ask you, how many times have you pulled up the BBC here in India for the kind of stories that they have put out, which has been riddled with misinformation as it's being alleged by Mr. Mohandas Pai? I am asking you, how are we asserting ourselves and saying that we will defend our sovereignty and the right to correct information? Is that not a fair question to ask? Udayji, why should such organizations continue to prosper in our
Anand,
country
I am here
and
in my
grow?
capacity as an author. Anand,
No,
my job
I respect you,
of
Udayji.
CIC,
Udayji, I
Central
respect you.
Information Commissioner is a different job. I am a judge in the Central RTI Court. But here I come in my capacity as an author, as a historian, as a former journalist who has covered these events very closely during my tenure in Gujarat. And therefore, I very strongly believe that this misinformation should stop. The government of India should take stronger steps to contain BBC, to convey to the government of Britain to intervene and see as to what kind of structure BBC has. Who are those people? There are pan-Islamists in BBC. There are people with communist-minded thinking. All those people have to be looked at now.
You make a fair point.
Attacking the Prime Minister of India, who is getting repeatedly elected.
The simple point
And one
is,
more thing, this government has done a good job of developmental policies for the minorities.
Sir, there is no. But I'll tell you
one
what,
more thing.
Udayji, I'm interrupting you. Udayji, I'm interrupting. With due respect, Udayji, I'm interrupting you here, sir. Sir,
very good
sir,
for
it is
minority
not
community.
about how we treat our people. We don't need to tell anybody else. The people know it themselves. It is this. It is why they tend. This is how they tend to always put us in a defensive position. We have to turn around and ask them, who are you to put this out, and on what basis? Have you got an authentication and a certification by the government of India from the Prime Minister's office? Have you got the Supreme Court judgments and the positions in place? Have you got your facts right? And if you are not, then you stand in contempt of the court here. You stand in contempt of the people of India and the government.
Absolutely.
Is that not a position that we should take, Pandit Satish Sharma ji? I know you are organizing a protest against the BBC this Sunday, but your thoughts. Thank you for your patience, and I'll go back to Sonal ji after this.
Anandji, Jai Shri Ram. I can't tell you how happy I am that this documentary has actually been aired now, because we see this unholy trinity in its full form. The Labour Home Secretary at the time, the gentleman who was responsible for the dossier which said there were weapons of mass destruction in Iraq. He was called a liar in the House of Commons. He is the person who the Bharatiya indigenous left-leaning media have chosen to be their spokesman. And you know, that says to me, it's an indication of how desperate the Congress media, the left-leaning media are, that they have had to resort to such a disreputable person and to produce and refer to a disgrace documentary in order to try in some way and shape to tarnish Prime Minister Modi ji. But there are two aspects on here which we're very, very delighted to see. We have a Labour Party Home Secretary automatically assuming in 2002 that the Hindus were at fault. And we have the same Labour Party and the same Labour leadership in Leicester automatically assuming that the Leicester issue was Hindus who were at fault. You know, we're almost 20 years now, and it's the same institutionalized, systematized anti-Hindu, anti-India rhetoric that they're trying to push. But I would say that the Bharatiya government has a responsibility to actually sort this issue out. There is no reason at all why the BBC's license to broadcast online services, radio services and television streaming services should not be suspended. Please remember the British government have suspended Republic TV because they decided it didn't match its editorial standards. The British government suspended RT's right to broadcast, the Russian state broadcaster, because it felt that there was some sort of an issue with its news supply. It was contrary to the desired messaging. So why on earth hasn't the government automatically suspended, even if it's only for a period of 7 days, the BBC's right to broadcast? And for those who are so upset by freedom of speech and freedoms of broadcasting, etc., please also remember that freedom of speech is an obligation that a government has to its citizens. There is no obligation on any government to give freedom of speech to out-of-state, non-state actors, especially when they act in a manner which is hostile. So I'm delighted that all these snakes are coming out of the woodwork. Here in the United Kingdom, we are now beginning to have quite a, shall we say, a delightful time with this issue. Labour have shot themselves in the foot, and it's almost as though, you know, chor machaye shor, the more noise they make, the more they are revealing how much they have stolen and how their morality is so inadequate. I was listening to Jack Straw's statements, and one by one I was thinking, hang on, he's accusing Prime Minister Modi of delaying the police and preventing them from helping protect citizens. Well, actually, we saw that on Leicester. We all saw it in front of videos, didn't we? Hindu temples were being attacked and the police were standing to one side in a Labour-dominated Leicester. So we are going to see more and more of this hypocrisy. And I think the one thing that was really clear was the unbelievable white man's burden in Jack Straw's attitude and his demeanour. You know, the manner in which he assumed that he actually had a right to send an investigative team to investigate something like this. I'm really looking forward to finding out, did the Congress Party at that time give permission to Jack Straw to send a team or not? Because that's the heart of this issue. If they did, then it's interference by a non-state actor in the internal affairs of Bharat. And this is going to run and run. And I'm really hoping it's going to give us an opportunity to bring the BBC to the table and have a genuine conversation about the manner in which they continue to harm the British Hindu community and India's national state and reputation.
Very well put there, and it doesn't stop with the BBC. We've just got information coming through our investigations editor Manoj Gupta, who says that, and this is a CNN News 18 exclusive, it's a big story, ladies and gentlemen, just getting you the gist of it, we'll get you more details through the course of tonight and tomorrow. The Muslim Brotherhood, Pakistan, and there is an anti-India campaign that's being waged. Top intelligence sources are telling CNN News 18 via our investigations editor Manoj Gupta that Pakistan and their handlers are sitting outside the country and running a strong media campaign against Bharat. They are associated with media organizations in Turkey and Qatar. There is the whole idea of political instability in Pakistan right now is the main reason that Pakistani elements have been doing all this in the name of anti-India history to divert the attention and to try and refocus it away from what is happening in Pakistan. Journalists and media organizations settled in Turkey and Qatar are supporting, and there are other nations who are supporting them. They've actually formed a group. They have actually formed a group which is propagating disinformation. It's spread by pro-Pakistan groups, pro-China groups to undermine India's relations with Gulf countries. It's a big network that is happening. We will try and get you these details very soon and more details as to how this organized racket is running. Part of these people who are running these rackets on these channels are then finding their way elsewhere. And you know where, in terms of other media organizations, and then they continue to peddle the same narrative. More skeletons will tumble out of the closet. I've run out of time, so I thank our panelists. Thank you very much for your thoughts, and I look forward to speaking with you at length as we get more details on the same. Thank you very much. We're going to take a very short break. When we come back, we are in an exclusive conversation with Congressman Republican Dr. Rich McCormick. Stay with us.
Along with your leader Sonia Gandhi, you shed copious tears. You did not shed copious tears for Mohan Chand Sharma, the brave police inspector who lost his life. You shed copious tears for the perpetrators of the Batla House attack, the Indian Mujahideen.
Okay.
Are you not the same Digvijay Singh? Just a second, Zaka, who after the horrific 26/11 Mumbai terror attack, what did you say? ये तो RSS की साजिश थी. Had it not been for Tukaram Omle, who actually managed to lay his hands on Ajmal Kasab, who was then tried and put to death here, the RSS Sazish theory may have actually been vindicated, because there are so many people who want to lap up every trash that comes their way when they have to put the BJP or the RSS in the dock for all the wrong reasons.
Okay. So let me expand, please. Let me expand to other guests also. They're all patiently waiting. Lieutenant General Kulkarni, as somebody who's been, lifelong in the armed forces, when you see this kind of political commentary coming in from major opposition parties, it's not just the Congress. We've seen Arvind Kejriwal ask questions or proof supposedly for the surgical strikes. We have seen numerous other leaders. I don't want to quote each of them, whether it was Randeep Surjewala, Mr. P. Chidambaram, Kapil Sibal, who used to be in the Congress at that point of time, all asking questions about or proof over the surgical strikes. Does it send out a message, particularly to our adversary countries, Pakistan, China, etc., that look, the polity in this country is divided and we can exploit that division? Whether it was an Imran Khan, whether it is a Xi Jinping, are they looking at these statements and saying that, look, they don't have a national consensus on as important an issue as national security? So we can exploit those divisions within. Does that message go across?
Thank you, Zaka. I think yes, these are all irresponsible statements, and definitely the enemy takes advantage of it. They see that within the country, because we are a democracy, there are all kinds of talks and all kinds of views, and so, blatantly being said so, which is highly incorrect. Because you understand who are our enemy, China, where everything is controlled. Who is the second enemy, Pakistan, where everything is governed by the army there. And well, Pakistan uses terrorism as an instrument of state policy. Here in a democracy, everybody seems to air their views, which is incorrect, highly irresponsible, definitely counterproductive, and something of which the enemy would take advantage of. Now, let's take all these, whether surgical strike, Balakot subsequently, or what's happened in Pulwama. Now, statements emanating that for Pulwama, you don't have Prime Minister, whoever it is. I'm apolitical. I've conducted all these kind of exercises. I know what it means. You don't take permission from the Prime Minister to move troops. These are administrative moves, which everybody takes. Should an incident like this happen? Well, it shouldn't have happened. But if it has happened, that's the reason why. A little bit of somewhere, something would have happened, and that is why. Now, to question these kind of things is absolutely irresponsible.
Sanjay, I mean, look at the optics. On a day when the country is celebrating Parakram Divas, we are honoring the legacy of Netaji Subhash Chandra Bose and the Indian National Army. You have the Prime Minister renaming 21 islands in the Andaman and Nicobar Islands. And then when these islands have been named after Paramveer Chakra awardees, many of them giving their life, making the supreme sacrifice for the country, for a Congress leader, a senior Congress leader, multiple-term chief minister in the past, to come out and say, where is the proof of Balakot strikes? I mean, it's tone deaf. It's frankly, it's unpatriotic. And most importantly, it's politically counterproductive.
Well, Zaka, I'm not a counsel for Mr. Digvijay Singh, but I would like to make a very dispassionate statement. Number one, I don't think this is a very spectacular breaking news item because not just the Congress, but several opposition parties had raised similar apprehensions around that time. But let me make one categorical statement. I believe in India's entire political history. If there is one party that has actually politicized the military, it's the BJP. And let's make a distinction here. I don't think any political party, any responsible leader has ever made a statement which is critical of the armed forces. For heaven's sake, I think they are the bravest in the country. They are amongst the, I would say, those who actually work with very limited kind of quality of armaments they need to defend our frontiers and to prevent us from terrorism. I think the question here is not about the armed forces at all, which the BJP does, shooting from the, the shoulders of the brave soldiers.
No, but by repeatedly asking for proof, that seems to be the same trope again and again, Sanjay, that by asking for proof, it's not just a political point. You're not just questioning the political executive. You are also questioning the action itself, the military action itself.
No, I just want to make one point, Zaka. Let us just take the example of this surgical strike that happened in 2016, which was led by the very intrepid Lieutenant General D.S. Huda. Mr. Huda was considered to be the principal architect behind that entire surgical strike. And I think the entire country is one on these matters. I don't think there's ever been any dispute on that. I think he also went on to say later on, and this is his words, not the Congress's words, where he said such surgical strikes or cross-border attacks across the line of actual control, the LOC, had happened several times, 6 to 8 times, even in the time of Mr. Vajpayee. So I believe the Modi government's muscular nationalism to try and appropriate everything that the armed forces do to make it a political spin is one of the unfortunate tragedies of our time.
The issue I thought was long settled, not least because, this was the biggest talking point in the 2019 general elections. The people of India voted. And I think it's overwhelmingly clear where they stand on this issue. But I want to ask Sanju Verma, it's not just what Digvijay Singh said today. Rahul Gandhi said this in the aftermath of the surgical strikes, and I quote, "You are hiding behind the blood of our soldiers who have sacrificed their lives in Jammu and Kashmir. Our Jawans have given blood. They've carried out the surgical strikes. You are doing khoon ki dalali."
Welcome back. We're now going to be in conversation with someone who's been part of the US Marine Corps as a helicopter pilot, rose to the ranks of a commander. He's a physician in the emergency room, so he's a doctor. He's also the representative in the US Congress of the 6th District of Georgia. He's Republican Congressman Dr. Rich McCormick. Dr. McCormick, namaste, Jai Hind, and thank you very, very much for joining us. It's good early morning to you. My first question, and as we begin this conversation, and I thank you for joining us, is if we look back at 2022 and look ahead into 2023, how do you see the development of Indo-US ties, that too in the shadows of the Russia-Ukraine conflict?
I actually think we need to be more aggressive in developing our relationships between India and the United States, two of the most important democracies in the world. I think if you talk about the stability of the geostability of that region, that India is surrounded by China, Bangladesh, Pakistan, the ability for 1.3 billion people as consumers, as producers, as allies, as people who see the world very similar to the way we do. I think we need to strengthen that continually through economic bonds, through military bonds, through streamlined immigration policies. I think we need to make it easier for our countries to work together, and I think we need to continue to develop that in our bonds, both through treaties and trade.
Let's focus on trade. Many nations which were only dependent on China are looking at either China plus one or ABC, that is anywhere but China. So the alternative manufacturing base to counter China's manufacturing dominance that it also uses to threaten other nations via its foreign policy because they believe in comprehensive national power. India is the option, the only major economy expected to grow at 6 to 7%. Can it be the best viable option for the US and other multinational companies across the world, especially at a time when we are all looking at possible recessionary waves in 2023?
You nailed it, actually. United States has a constitution that India kind of modeled their constitution after. That's why we have very similar outlooks on empowering people over government. That's what makes governments more successful when you take the power away from them and you actually hand it over to the people to be as productive and creative. Look, the people who immigrate here from India get it. They understand that the United States has unique opportunities and they've taken an opportunity to that. That's why they've been so successful. Same thing in India. When you have hardworking, industrious, intelligent people who produce things and have that much economic power as far as just not, like you said, 1.3 billion people being able to consume things, create things. The creativity that comes out of there is a nation that, one of the only nations in the world that could keep up with the United States in production and trade. And they're friendly. They're not looking for world dominance. They're looking for their piece of the puzzle. They're looking to fit in with the world economy. They're some of the best immigrants we have, some of the best citizens we have, and we want to continue to foster that relationship. And I believe, just like you said, they're the one country that can be contrary to what China is doing in dominating everything from pharmaceutical production. They actually are pretty self-sufficient. You guys in India are pretty self-sufficient with your agriculture, relying a little bit on foreign fertilizer, but overall doing very well in that area. Obviously, technology doing very well, developing middle class, excellent. So we need to continue to forge that and divest from countries that are not friendly to the United States. I think that's really important.
It feels good to you acknowledge our strengths as we are growing and we are on that path to growth. But the road ahead for India-US strategic convergence, how do you see that? The Quad has a potential to become the pivotal anti-China bloc, but we as a nation have refused to join the trade pillar of the Indo-Pacific Economic Framework for Prosperity, or IPEF, because India is not comfortable with the language used by the United States for this initiative. The notion is that it will further US business interests, but at the cost of our interests, with factors like labor laws and environmental protection.
Yeah, so it's not even about United States benefiting the United States. It's because some people in certain administrations think that they know better for another country than they do. And it's the same way here in the United States. There's some politicians that believe that they should set how much a person makes in a business. I'm not for that. That's for India to figure out. You guys have your own independent nation. You understand how to govern your people. Your people have a constitution that protects them and gives them rights also. You guys get to work that out. It's not for us to determine how much you make. It's up for your country to determine how much you make, how your industry is run, how much taxation, regulation. That's not for us to determine. We are here to be good trade partners with you. And I don't think it's great for our country to do that over India or in the United States. I don't think it's up to the government how to run our businesses here either. And that's one of the fights we're having for the soul of American government, is how much does government get to tell the individual what to do? And they shouldn't be doing it in India or in the United States.
Well, minimum government, maximum governance is a principle that even our Prime Minister Narendra Modi has been championing over the last 8 years, and we're working hard in that direction. But I'm just going to push you here. Is there a possibility of a strategic convergence going forward between India and the United States? Because that will also mean a huge shift within the axis. We'll come to that in a bit, but is this possible?
It is. As a matter of fact, if you think about it, just to our mutual benefit, not just to be strong trade partners, but we need production of PPE, of drugs, of technologies in a region such as India, right next to China, a main competitor. We need to be militarily tied also. Think about all the things that are going on in that region that can make it very unstable very quickly.
Yes.
To have strong military ties with India, to update their military, to be a strong strategic ally moving forward, to stabilize that region and the whole world is very important. I think we need to continue to develop those ties.
But that also means a significant shift in priorities and access. How do you see the Biden government's position vis-a-vis Pakistan? The Biden administration, has it been much softer on Pakistan? with some of its moves militarily, also aid, etc. Because there was a decoupling policy that was followed. It was initiated around the times of President Clinton, followed by President Bush, President Obama, and of course, President Trump, very, very articulate about his thoughts on Pakistan, vis-a-vis his opinion about India.
Absolutely. If you look at their initiatives militarily, when you want to sell arms to a country that has not shown real good favor to us, has done some things not to help us with Afghanistan, not to help us with Osama bin Laden, not to help us with some bad actors. When you have a country that openly discriminates against Christians, when you have a country that has not been favorable to us, you don't reward that behavior. India has been just the opposite. Both the citizens and the government of India has been very favorable to the United States. Like I said, they understand that this is not a religious conflict between the two nations. We can live very much in harmony. There is a fundamentalism that's coming out of Pakistan that's very concerning to me. And if their government's not serious about taking care of that and addressing that and being favorable to the United States, then why are we rewarding that?
Fair point, but it also depends on the mandate. You need to have strong mandate to have very firm policies and push through those policies. The midterms, it was predicted to be a Republican wave. It did not turn out that way. But ignoring all of that, Donald Trump has declared his intention to run again in 2024. What explains this early announcement? Has he rushed into it?
You know, I'm not going to worry about what Donald Trump is doing. We got enough things to worry about, people who are actually elected in office right now. He's going to do his own thing. He's always been very independent. He does have a very good relationship with Prime Minister Modi, though. Yeah. And I think that's something good. But that's going to work itself out in the primary. I'm not going to get involved in that. Everybody has their own tactics. Trump does it his way. In the end, we have to focus on our policy right now. I'm going to be on foreign affairs. I'm going to be on armed services. I'm going to do whatever I can to tie us very strong in that area. When you talk about China and its strategic importance to how we move forward, right now they're dominating the world in the way that they're handing out vaccinations, loaning, buying debt. Meanwhile, they have about 3 times the amount of debt that we have, if I'm not mistaken. They're not paying interest on it, so it puts them in a position where they should have a lot of inflation, but they don't, because they're artificially controlling their economy. And I think it's basically cheating. Trump used to call them out on it all the time. And this is very dangerous to the world's stability if you're able to cheat economics. It's not how it's supposed to work. We need to be very honest in how we're dealing with this country. We need to be very honest what we allow them to buy in our debt, in our land, and everything else, that we have an honest discussion about economies and strategic advancements.
But to do that, you still have to have the mandates. Allow me to push you a little bit more, Dr. McCormick. Trump fielded nearly 300 of his handpicked candidates, a lot of candidates, 300 of them faced defeat in the midterm. Despite a strong Republican supporter base, 2020 vote did not work, go the Republican way. Do you think the Republicans will look beyond Trump, or will they rally behind him? Who's going to lead the Republican charge?
Yeah, well, if you look at my election, for example, I wasn't endorsed by any of those guys. True. Endorsements mean only so much. You got to run on your own experience and what your record shows. I think when you talk about it right now, the most important thing to me is to get rid of Biden. I'll be honest with you. I don't think his policies in that region have been strong. I don't think it rewards good behavior. I don't think it's strategically smart the way he's looking downwind on the China-India region with Pakistan there. If you look at the what he's reinforcing, both in military updates, economy, relationships with Modi, all those folks, I don't think he's the right guy. And I hate to be insulting to anybody, but whether it's Trump or DeSantis or anybody else, I'll take any of them over Biden. That's the bottom line.
Well, that's a very strong statement, but how would you rate President Biden's China policy? Let me ask you that.
Well, let's start with the way that we'll go all the way back to when Obama was president and we dealt with Iran. You don't reward bad behavior. That's a bad thing. Look at the difference of strength when you talk about what we did in Afghanistan. I was in Afghanistan in 2016. I've been in the Persian Gulf several times as a Marine. When you talk about the way we handled Ukraine, when you encourage the leader of a nation to desert the nation That's not strong leadership. That's the kind of things that you're looking at from the Democratic side of our politics right now. If you want to have strong policy, you don't encourage leaders to desert a country when things get rough. If you look at the way we pulled out Afghanistan, the worst withdrawal in U.S. history from any nation. We're going to have an investigation on that. We need to look at these things. Strong leadership doesn't start with deserting your nation. Strong leadership doesn't come with bowing down to nations who act badly. Strong leadership doesn't come from worrying about stronger ties to good behaving nations. That's what we're dealing with right now. It's a clear choice. I think if you look at, you want to talk world policy, and we're not even talking about U.S. economic, I could talk about that all day. If you want to talk about prepping for the next stage of world politics, I think it's clear there's a decisive difference between the Democrats and the Republicans and what we stand for. Strong leadership, making sure that our enemies know that we're not fooling around. We have a well-trained, well-supplied, good intelligence for our military. They shouldn't be sitting on the sidelines when we have Americans in a foreign country that's hostile. We should be leading the way, not following other countries and worrying what's going to happen. You can't be looking over your shoulder. That's not what leaders do. You lead from the front. And we haven't been doing this under this administration.
But Dr. McCormick, the Dems believe they've done okay in the midterms and that President Biden is looking stronger despite the recession, the economic troubles, the abortion issue, and of course the Afghanistan fiasco and the initial response to the Russia-Ukraine conflict.
I think he got off to a late start. The midterms are kind of deceiving. You had a lot of redistricting. Nationally, we won by over 3%. That's the first time we've done that in about 20 years. If you look at politics right now, our education system, our border, there's a lot of things coming to bear right now. The economy is not done sorting itself out. And this was created by government. We keep on looking back to the government to solve the problems that the government created. That's what Democrats do. They move more and more towards, I'm not going to say socialism, we're well past socialism. We're moving towards communism. When you can have a government tell private businesses whether they can be open or closed, who they hire, who they fire, how much they pay their employees, by definition, isn't that fascism? I think we're moving far past what made America strong, which is empowering business owners to do what they do best. Anybody who's immigrated here from India understands that. When you work 16-hour days every day, sometimes 7 days a week for years on end, I wonder why you're successful. Because you were allowed to work hard. When you have a government step in, let's say in France, where you can't open your business more than the other guy next to you because that's unfair. That's not the American way. That's not what made us successful. And the more government takes control, the less we do well. The government's not our friend. It's a necessary evil. And that's what the United States Constitution was based on, is empowering the person over the government. And that's where we're getting kind of lost in this politics. And when you want to talk about losing a midterm, we won the midterm. We picked up 10 seats. We picked up the majority now. Now, maybe we didn't pick it up by 50 seats, but that's okay. We're heading in the right direction. And we're not done. We're going to pick up the Senate this next election. I predict that. And I think we're going to pick up the presidency. And I think it's going to be good for the nation. So stand by. 2 years is going to be a reckoning. And I think the United States is going to get it right. And hopefully we move strongly towards better relationships with India and keeping that region accountable.
Well, all the best to everybody because you're going to get in the fray and it eventually depends on the voter. But let's look at the region and this area, the Ukraine conflict. Is this fast becoming another Afghanistan? Or do you agree with President Trump where he says that it's building up to World War III?
Yeah, so Ukraine, we're going to win that. When I say we, I mean the good guys. Russia's not the good guys. I'm sorry, that's just the way it is. They did the wrong thing. We're supplying them with military equipment. They're winning that war. Russia's being exposed. Their tactics are obsolete. Their weaponry is only as good as their training. I think that's going to be a defining moment for us, and I think it's good. I think we have to have accountability with the amount of supplies and things we give them. I do not think we need boots in the ground in Ukraine. I'm not willing to put my sons in harm's way. But I think it's good that Ukraine wins that because we need to get back to food production. Because, by the way, when we talk about strategy moving forward, Ukraine is the breadbasket of Europe. It right now has grain rotting in silos. It's not doing the next crop rotation. You have fertilizers being cut in Germany and Netherlands. You have China with pollution all over. You have the United States with a third of our chickens gone now because of a virus. We have problems. And if we're not careful moving forward, we're going to have really big problems and food shortages. And what will that do? That'll have people turning to the government to solve the problems that the government created. Once again, this is by design. Don't think that the government doesn't want more control. They do. We need to free up the people to do what they do best, which is produce.
Well, let me ask you this. India has been rather equidistant, and a lot of nations have been surprised by India's assertion of its strategic autonomy. Would you agree that we are entering an age of a multilateral, multipolar world?
I think Prime Minister Modi has done a good job of balancing, but the future is yet to be determined. The choices he makes going forward are going to determine our relationship with them. His relationships with China and Russia are going to be precarious over the years, because as you choose the United States as a strong ally, it will alienate other nations. That's just kind of the balance of power we face. There are certain nations in this world that believe that the government should dominate. Russia, China, Pakistan, whether you be a theocracy or a pseudo-democracy, which a lot of these countries are, whether you be communist or fascist, these countries are not interested in what we are. That's why India has done so well in the last year or two, is because you are really moving towards a citizen-based government where you really do have control of your own destiny. And I think that needs to be encouraged. But if Modi starts to become politically correct and starts moving away from that, it will fail just like any other country.
The idea of America is rooted in equality and equal opportunity. You have been very effusive in your praise for the Indian diaspora and their contribution. You've also said that they're well behaved, they follow the rules, and even in your emergency room experience, you've not seen them come up with the kind of problems others have. But aren't there increasing racial attacks on Hindus and Sikhs? Isn't the Indian diaspora being targeted? Your thoughts on that?
So if you look at historically here in the United States, for example, when the Jews started immigrating to the United States, also a successful demographic, also discriminated against, people will always go against what they don't know. And to some people, Hinduism is mystery. And there's a lot of lies out there, quite frankly, about the caste system and about how Indians think and how they quote unquote discriminate. It couldn't be further from the truth, in my opinion, in my experience. You look at the Indians who immigrate to my area, and we have a large Indian immigrant population in my district, and it makes up 1/5 of my doctors. They're some of the most generous, loving, family-oriented people that I've ever met. Definitely pay their taxes, definitely follow laws. You should never be punished for that. But it's hard. It's hard to get through the immigration system, which is convoluted by a lot of regulation. We actually discourage legal immigration at the expense of illegal. We encourage illegal immigration when we make it very hard to immigrate here legally. One of the things that's frustrating me right now is when you have people who speak out and discriminate. We had in one of my counties, we had somebody put up a bunch of signs of red dot. And it was all about hating on that segment of the Hindu population. And I think it's really important not just to say that's wrong in private, but to publicly say that's wrong. We don't do that. That's not the United States way. We are the most, in my opinion, historically accepting nation of immigrants. People talk about the racism problem in the United States. Go somewhere else and see what it's like. There are countries all over the world that discriminate way more than the United States, including Africa, by the way. I've been stationed in Africa. I've been over there many times. I've been to Europe. I've been to the Far East. I've been to South America. I've been all over. And I'll tell you, the United States is one of the most accepting, loving, gracious countries in the world. Yes, it has its problems, just like every other country. But I'd like to judge us by those good people who make up the majority, not the minority who cause trouble, just like in every other country. I don't care if you go to Afghanistan, it's 10% of the people that cause the problem for the other 90%. It's the same way in the United States. We are a good country who believes in people from all over, and that needs to be reinforced. And when people act badly, we speak powerfully against that.
Well, how do you see the allegation that a lot of the Western media and academia targets Prime Minister Modi directly or via shaped narratives against the Hindu faith, its followers among the diaspora, and of course India under Prime Minister Narendra Modi? I'm sure the BBC documentary controversy, you're aware of it.
And look, you get discriminated against for succeeding, right? You're going to get a higher tax bracket. You're going to be limited by what schools you can go to. This is the problem with that whole idea of equity, right? Everybody should have the same outcome, regardless of your talent or your work ethic. You talk about a population that's being punished for success. The Indian population, even the immigrants in the United States. If you want to talk about the differences between the Democratic and Republican Party, one says, as hard as you work, you'll be as successful as you are. And that's the American way. That's what's been successful in America for a couple hundred years. The other party says, no, we want to move towards what Europe is moving towards. We want to make sure that nobody gets ahead, that it's unfair that too many Indians get into Harvard or Stanford or an Ivy League school. Matter of fact, any public school, we shouldn't have too many Indians because you're already too successful. Does that make sense to you? I believe very much in what Martin Luther King said. You should be judged by the content of your character and not the color of your skin. This isn't about what religion you are. This isn't about what you look like. This is about how hard you work and how talented you are, because the more successful you are, I don't care if you're Indian or African American or anything else, the more successful you are, the more successful we are. That's the United States. That's the strength that we've always had. And we all have our role to play.
Any plans to visit India? I'm going to ask this first. Last two questions.
Absolutely. As a matter of fact, my idea is that every freshman congressman should go to India, just like we go to Israel, because it's just as strategically important. The trade and the strategy that surrounds India as a nation is extremely important. And I think most congressmen don't have that experience. I went to India same time that President Clinton came to India. I was actually part of the support. We weren't flying around President Clinton, but I was doing the press corps. And we kind of went all over and got to view India, got to go to the Taj Mahal. I didn't get to go to the Tiger Sanctuary, but I got to watch the president go. And we got to go all over New Delhi, got in a few cab wrecks because for some reason the traffic's really bad there. And really unique experience. Exactly. Enjoyed the people, enjoyed the culture. We're there doing Holi. So it was a festive occasion. But unique experience too. It's not usual in the United States when you come in to land on an airstrip that you see a whole pack of monkeys run across the runway, or that you have to keep your windows closed so an animal doesn't come in.
Well,
and
it
steal
doesn't
your
happen
jewelry.
everywhere. But I'm running out of time.
Unique...
I just quickly want to ask you, Dr. McCormick, your thoughts on Prime Minister Narendra Modi and his leadership over the last 8 years. My final question.
Extremely strong. He has brought you guys through a pandemic. You're one of the few countries that's succeeding economically during this hard times where everybody else is really struggling. And even though maybe you're not as successful as you want to be, you're way more successful than most other countries. That's all based on his leadership. That's empowering people. Once again, he's not grabbing control. He's allowing people to succeed. His policies are very similar to what the United States have really been based our success. Matter of fact, in some ways, we need to get back to more policies that are like the United States that he's been admonished, basically very excited about, that he's been instituting in India that we need to continue to hold on dearly to in the United States. I think he's done a tremendous job. I want to continue to see him in leadership roles because I think that he's done good things for India. And he's also very pro the United States, which is going to continue to be strategically important to not just the United States, but to India. The strategic stability of that region is based on strong allies like the United States.
Right. Congressman McCormick, thank you very much for your time, and we look forward to your visit to India very, very soon. Thank you for taking the right stand. Thank you. Namaste. With that, we call it a wrap. Zaka ready with brass tacks.
Good evening, this is Brass Tacks. I'm Zaka Jacob. The controversy over the BBC documentary is now boiling over. The opposition is alleging that the government is scared that the truth is finally coming out. That's what Rahul Gandhi said when he was asked about this in the Bharat Jodo Yatra. The government, on the other hand, says the BBC documentary is not banned, it's only blocked from being broadcast or shown on any platform. The BJP is also saying that this is part of the Western media's bias against Modi, and surely, whether it's the BBC or any other media platform, cannot be more authentic than the Supreme Court of India, which went into the 2002 riots and gave a clean chit to Mr. Modi during his tenure as Chief Minister in 2002 in Gujarat. But first, the story so far.
डॉक्यूमेंट्री जो है कहीं भी लीगली जो है लीगल बतौर लीगल कानूनी रूप से वो बैन नहीं है भारत में, तो उसे देखना कोई गुनाह नहीं है।
बीजेपी नेताओं को बात देखने You can ban, you can suppress the press, you can use CBI, ED, all this stuff. But the truth is the truth. It has a nasty habit of coming out.
ये गंभीर विषय है।
Part 1 of the 2-part BBC series was found to be malicious propaganda. It lacked in objectivity, it sort of lacked credibility. It questioned the authority of the Indian justice system. It questioned the credibility of the Supreme Court of India.
All right, we're getting a piece of breaking news right at the top of the show. Things were expected to get heated as the Jawaharlal Nehru University Students' Union was planning to broadcast this particular documentary, the part 1. It was supposed to happen at 9 p.m. tonight, and just moments ahead of that, now the JNSU Students' Union leadership has come out and said that the electricity in and around JNU has been cut. They are alleging, this is the JNSU leadership is alleging, that this has been deliberately done so that this documentary is not telecast there on campus. Nikhil is joining us live from JNU. Nikhil, tell us what's happening there. All right, he's on the phone. Tell us what's happening there right now. Is there electricity on campus? And what is the JNSU leadership telling you?
So, Zaka, we are currently reporting from inside the place where the screening was all set to take place. The place is the JNU SU office at the DEFLAS. It is the name of that particular site, and we are already running low on the network. This is the reason why we are unable to connect on the video call at the moment. But right now what we can see is that many of the students have gathered here, right where the screen was all set to take place. But there is blackout, Zaka, in entire JNU campus. Now the Students' Union, they are alleging that this is the trick of the administration to avoid the screening of this controversial BBC subject. But on the other side, there are some of the, in fact, if we go by the details, Zaka, today as well, earlier this morning, there was this notice which was out by the administration in the JNU, which clearly said that students should refrain from doing so, and they have not even sought any kind of official permission from the administration. And if they still go ahead with the screening of the BBC subject, then they will be liable for the action. The strict action in terms of the non-disciplinary inside the campus will be taken against all those students or individuals who are part of this particular activity. And going by this version of the ABVP, earlier this morning, Zaka, they said that they are not going to say any of the word in the public domain because there is ban on entire subject from the government of India only. But later this evening, they are saying that the students who are conducting this entire activity, they are stooges of the British mindset. So this is something which is being alleged by the ABVP. But now, as far as the picture is concerned, we are all present at the place where the screening is all that is place. There is entire campus of Jawaharlal Nehru University. In fact, we have spoken to a number of students from the Students' Union as well. They are saying that this is the trick, but we are well prepared for the plan B as well.
Okay, let's see how this plays out. So there is no lights. It's lights out inside JNU campus right now. Just at 9 o'clock when this documentary was supposed to be screened there, the JNU administration had written to the Students' Union saying that it would be illegal to broadcast this movie. They were still going ahead with their plans, and now the JNSU is alleging that the electricity has been cut off just ahead of this screening. Let me now open this up to our guests who are joining us. Gopal Krishna Agarwal is spokesperson of the BJP. Sanjay Jha, former Congress leader and political analyst. Manisha Priyam, political analyst, also joining us. Adit Kothari is founder of Indic Society, joining us live from London. Veena Sikri, former diplomat and also one of the 300 eminent citizens who wrote a letter last week against this documentary. Let me go across to Gopal Krishna Agarwal first. So there is a view that, what is the big deal about this documentary by actually doing all of this? not banning it, but technically blocking it from being broadcast, what's happening in JNU, so on and so forth. You're actually giving it more publicity, you're giving it more oxygen than it deserves. Had you decided to ignore this, then perhaps nobody would be talking about it. And now this latest thing where the JNUSU, the Students' Union, is alleging that just before they were to broadcast this documentary, lights have been cut off.
Thing is, Zaka, we have to understand that there is a Tukde gang in the country which leaves no opportunity to undermine India's